We sold this house to our eldest son and his wife. Stranger needs to get out now." In response to these unbelievable words from my in-laws and Edward, while I was repaying the mortgage for their home. From the beginning, the three of them were only with me to make me pay the loan. The moment I realized this fact, my feelings instantly shifted from gratitude to hatred. "Then, I'll move out." To the three of them, who spoke with mockery, I answered with a defiant smile. "The fact that they picked a fight with me, I'll make them regret it from the depths of hell." Immediately, I started to plan my revenge on the three of them with the help of someone. My name is Vanessa Baker. I am a 48-year-old lawyer working in a law firm. Currently, I am supporting my in-laws and husband, living together. It all started when I gifted a house to my in-laws. Edward and I got married when I was 30. When we decided to get married, Edward's father, Steve, encountered an unexpected accident. He injured his leg, making it difficult for him to stand on his own, forcing him into a wheelchair life. Concerned about the elderly care for my in-laws, who weren't so young, I gifted them an accessible barrier-free house. At first, both of them were considering living in public housing, but I suggested that if they lived halfway between Edward's and my workplace, we could rush to help if anything happened. My family received a lot of help from the Baker family because of my father, and I want to repay that kindness. My father passed away before I got married. Just before his death, he was burdened with a huge debt, leaving our household finances in dire straits. To repay the debt, I had to borrow more, leading to a hellish life. Edward and his family were the ones who saved us from this life. Edward and his parents took over my father's debt. If you're hesitating to get married because of the debt, it's okay if we just pay it off, right? My parents feel the same way, right? It's a debt incurred from the company's bankruptcy, not from frivolous spending, so there's no reason not to help. That's right. We should help each other in times of trouble. There's no need to feel any guilt or inferiority. With those words, Edward and his parents helped us by paying off a large portion of the debt without saying anything. My father and I expressed our gratitude with tears, and I desperately took the bar exam. The total amount borrowed from Edward and his family was just under $50,000. If I became a lawyer and earned money, I could definitely repay it within my lifetime. I didn't want to remain indebted to them. I was determined to pass the exam and became a lawyer. And as a lawyer, I would definitely repay the money I borrowed from my in-laws. Driven by this thought, I worked hard and persevered. Thanks to my efforts, I passed the bar exam on my first attempt. I received congratulations from not only my father but also my in-laws. I immediately found employment and started working at a law firm. The director was a kind person, and the firm employed skilled lawyers, under whom I received guidance and quickly improved my skills. Eventually, I met clients who contracted me exclusively. And now I am a female lawyer with an annual income of over $100,000, becoming a figurehead for the firm. As my work began to stabilize, I successfully repaid the debt to my in-laws with my father. Thinking he had no more regrets in this world, my father followed my mother, who had passed away earlier, and left this world. When I became alone, Edward proposed to me. "You are a strong woman who can live on your own. But I want to be the man who can support you. I will continue to cherish you, so will you marry me?" Thus, our marriage was decided, and I thought we would start a smooth-sailing life. However, just then, Steve had an accident. Despite my in-laws' hesitation, I insisted on building a new barrier-free house for them because of the great favor they had done for me. The gratitude I feel towards my in-laws is immeasurable. So, please don't hold back. I want you to live a life without any inconvenience. It was sincere, not flattery or a facade. I expressed my true feelings. Perhaps touched by my passion, my in-laws reluctantly accepted my proposal with a troubled smile. However, right after their agreement, they continued with a "but. Vanessa, why don't you live with us? You were looking for a house to live in with Edward, weren't you?" "That's right. If you don't mind, let's live together. After we're gone, the house will be yours anyway. Edward has an older brother, Bill. He's 3 years older and moved out of the house years ago after getting married. He's busy with his own business, so I've heard from Edward's mother, Jane, that everything about the house has been left to Edward. In exchange for taking care of the in-laws, Edward can do as he pleases with their property." Before moving out after getting married, Bill had verbally communicated this to Edward. As my in-laws said, if we could live in the new house, that would become our family home. It would be closer to our workplace than it is now. Living together would mean we could support each other in case of anything. And there truly was no reason to refuse. But, wouldn't living with someone like me, an outsider, cause them unnecessary worry? After all the trouble I've caused even before we got married, could it really be okay for me to live with them? As I hesitated to respond, filled with anxiety, Edward seemed to sense my feelings and placed his hand on my shoulder, reassuring me with a smile. "I'll be there to support you, Vanessa, so it's going to be okay. All right?" With those words from Edward, I agreed to live with my in-laws. I thought the 4 of us would live happily together from now on. However, such a sweet life was nowhere to be found. "Vanessa, where did you put my morning clothes? Vanessa, the TV remote isn't working. Vanessa, could you lend me a shoulder? I want to sit on the sofa." For 13 years since we started living together, everyone in this house has been ordering me around for everything. They never try to handle things on their own, asking me for everything. And Steve, using his disability as an excuse, has been freely touching me everywhere. I told you I've prepared the morning clothes and hung them up, right? Jane, that's the air conditioner remote. The TV remote is on the desk. Steve, please ask Edward for physical assistance when he is around, not me. I can't fully support you. In the beginning, I put up with the dissatisfaction and handled everyone's requests. Taking on a mortgage and then being burdened with household responsibilities is ridiculous. I thought about getting a divorce multiple times. But every time, Edward would skillfully cover for me, and my in-laws would come crying. Since their attitude wasn't overtly abusive or intentionally making my life difficult, each time I was apologized to, my resolve wavered, and I stayed without divorcing. Eventually, Jane might have started showing signs of mild cognitive impairment, though it's unclear if it's the onset of dementia. But she began asking such questions more frequently. Edward, who had always said he would be my support before we got married, turned out to be completely unreliable. Can I really keep living like this? While harboring such anxieties, I continued living, but as I experienced more, I got used to it. Before I knew it, I adapted to the environment, finishing everything before being asked, and being able to express my opinions clearly to Edward and the others. However, I could not turn a blind eye to Steve's overbearing actions, complaining not only to Edward but even to Jane. I just can't overlook what Steve does. Lately, he even pretends to have dementia to touch me? Please, Jane, do something about it. Steve has not been diagnosed with dementia. To be precise, he went for a diagnosis, but he was not told he had dementia. The doctor said it was too mild to determine whether it was cognitive impairment or not. Please don't say that. It's because of his condition. There's nothing we can do about it. It's true that tendencies for such behavior can occur with dementia. However, those issues typically arise at a more advanced stage. Regarding Steve's behavior, it's just him doing whatever he wants under the guise of having dementia. even when I explain that the doctors haven't diagnosed him with dementia. My in-laws stubbornly claim he has it and use it as an excuse for any inconvenient behavior. If he truly had dementia, I wouldn't say anything. But using illness as a shield to make others endure is inexcusable. I've even talked to Edward about it, asking him to do something about his parents. But every time, he just brushes it off as too much trouble, saying we'll deal with it some other time. I was reaching my breaking point when something unexpected happened. This month it's finally paid off. I'm free from this hell. One afternoon, while I had a day off from work, I was organizing the household accounts and my diary. Then, looking at the bank book, I realized something that brightened my expression. This month, the mortgage for our in-laws' house would finally be repaid. Feeling filled with a sense of accomplishment, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Thinking about having a bit more money to spend freely made me incredibly happy. But this was just the beginning of the real hell. Vanessa, was the mortgage payoff this month? During dinner that evening, Edward suddenly asked about the mortgage. He had never mentioned it before, which made me wonder why he was bringing it up now. Then, with a friendly smile, he poured beer into his glass for me. Yes, but why do you ask all of a sudden? Well, we have to celebrate, right? You've been under a lot of pressure. So I want to throw a big celebration to say thanks for all your hard work. I was taken aback by his unexpected words. I was surprised that Edward felt this way and that he was aware of the burden on me. Though I thought to myself, then help out more around the house. It seemed he had been considering things in his own way. Any dissatisfaction I felt vanished in an instant, and I was all smiles. Edward, thank you. Can I look forward to the celebration? Of course. I'll discuss it with Mom and Dad and start preparing. Just look forward to it, Vanessa. Without any doubts, I accepted his invitation. And it seemed he quickly shared this plan with his parents. As the three of them began making preparations. A few weeks later, I was called by Edward and his parents. It was a calm period at work, and I had some free time. So it seemed like a good time for a celebration. Sorry for the sudden call. I have something to talk to you about. It's totally fine. Today, we have an important matter to discuss with you, Vanessa, from our family. A matter? I thought it might be about the celebration, but why phrase it so ominously? I expected a more straightforward approach. With those doubts in mind, I listened attentively to their conversation. Actually, now that the mortgage is paid off, we want you to leave this house. What? I was taken aback by the utterly unexpected statement. Leave the house along with the mortgage payoff? What am I being told? Was it a misunderstanding? It wouldn't be surprising if it was, given the nature of the statement. Unable to comprehend Edward's words, I was left speechless. And seeing my reaction, my in-laws hurriedly continued. We sold the house to our eldest son and his wife. Excuse me. It made no sense at all. Just as I was told to leave, now they say the house was sold to Bill and his wife. In essence, they were saying I was no longer needed. But such an unreasonable story was unacceptable. What have I done to deserve this? If we've been gifted such a magnificent house? There's no need for you anymore, Vanessa. I begrudgingly stayed with you until the mortgage was paid off. But now that we've received the house, it's ours. I have absolutely no need for you. I felt immense gratitude towards Edward and his family. So much so that I wanted to gift them a house. Which is why I've lived with them without saying anything until today. However, I've just learned that it was all an act. The help they provided me and my father was all to make me do something. Knowing I was desperately aiming to be a lawyer to repay my father's debts. They saw it as an investment that could potentially double in return. Just a gamble, thinking that way. It was all a setup to make me buy a house. Selling you a favor worked out since I knew you'd give us something big in return. Since you were like this with Edward since you started dating, I never thought my investment would go to waste. Just visiting your dad and you being overjoyed, giving us expensive wine as thanks. I thought you were so foolish. An easy woman. That was before my father's company went bankrupt. Until then, my family was relatively wealthy. Edward seemed to have targeted me for my family's wealth from the beginning, knowing I was aiming to be a lawyer. That's why he thought it was worth going this far. Without realizing any of this, I completely trusted Edward and his family. How foolish I am. I feel disgusted with myself. That's why we concocted this plan. If we could owe your father a favor, maybe he'd give us something big in return. And it was a huge success. We got this splendid new house. It's in our name, so once the mortgage is paid off, it's ours. What we do with our property is none of your business, right? I couldn't easily accept the words of these three, making inhuman statements. From the beginning, it was all orchestrated. For 13 years, they patiently waited for this moment. They never loved me or my father, only approached us seeing him as a cash cow. Never genuinely interacting with us. They had planned this from the start, getting close to our family. Facing this unbelievable reality, I felt so hopeless. My emotions plummeted into an abyss. Absolute despair. At that moment, despair seemed the most fitting word for me. I couldn't comprehend what they had done, thought, or were doing. That's the situation, so you better leave now. You no longer have a place in this house. You must have some belongings, so leaving right now might be tough, Edward. It's cruel to go that far. You have until tomorrow. We'll give you that much time to pack your things and leave. This house is now the property of the Baker family. Oh, and we're getting a divorce. There's no need for us to be a couple anymore. And I'm tired of your nagging. When you leave the house tomorrow, make sure to sign on the divorce papers. The phrase, Baker family, weighed heavily on me. From the beginning, I was never treated as part of the Baker family. That's why I was treated so unreasonably, worked like a slave. Managing both work and household duties, worked to the bone. When all the pieces finally connected, a dry smile escaped me. So, from the start, I was deceived by your family. That's what I'm saying. Are you too stupid to understand that? Edward's last remark made something snap inside me. Raising my head, which I had kept down, I managed a full smile and surprised my in-laws with my response. Then, I'll be moving out. Suddenly, with a bright smile, I admitted that I was going to leave the house easily, which made both my in-laws and Edward look surprised. You're surprisingly obedient. What are you plotting? Plotting? As if I could do that. Being suddenly thrown into this incomprehensible situation made me feel like I've been dropped to the lowest point of my life. That's exactly why my love for you and your family cooled off in an instant. I'll pack my things and leave today. I'll make sure to sign the divorce papers as well. I'll have someone from my office contact you later regarding the division of assets. So, thank you for everything up until now. Without hearing a response from my in-laws, I rushed into my room. I tried to suppress the urge to cry as I packed my bags, vowing not to let this treatment be the end of it. I had to make those responsible for my suffering pay, or I'd regret it forever. As I packed, I decided on revenge. What could hurt them the most? As I pondered this, a call came through. Seeing the caller's name, I hatched a plan. This person might be able to help. I answered the call, shared everything, and discussed my next steps. Without saying goodbye to Edward and the rest, I left the home I had lived in for years and deleted their contacts, ensuring they couldn't reach me. The effectiveness of my plan was proven when my in-laws bombarded me with calls the next day. Despite recognizing the familiar numbers, I was determined not to respond. Disgusted by the sight of those numbers first thing in the morning, I knew they must have realized what had happened. However, I refused to answer. Looking down on my phone, I smiled, assured by the person who took me in that I didn't have to answer. I nodded once in agreement, then Edward called, pushing me to my limit. I turned off my phone, never to turn it on again, and eventually canceled the service. Months later, I had found a new apartment and was living a stress-free life, thriving at work and enjoying my days. Freed from the toxic environment of my former home, I seemed radiant to others. Post-divorce, I was complimented on my improved appearance and demeanor, now having more time to interact positively at work. I've been preoccupied with issues at my in-laws' house, leaving me no time to get along with my coworkers. From now on, I will work harder. I will communicate more with everyone. I will value my relationships with people. It was when I was determined to do so that the office receptionist visited the floor in a panic and spoke to me with an altered complexion. "Ms. Walters, we have some people at the reception demanding to see you." Walters is my maiden name and my current last name. It was quite something for her, who usually works calmly and amiably, to be so disturbed. A concerned male colleague offered to accompany me, and as we headed to the lobby, my expression hardened at the sight of the people there. There she is. "Mom, I found Vanessa." "Vanessa? What do you mean by this? Cutting off contact like that is terrible. Do you have any idea what we've been through since then?" The arrivals were Edward and his mother, shouting inside the office. Their nerve to behave so unreasonably, and the unbearable sight made everyone around cast disapproving looks. In just a few months of not seeing them, both of their faces had become gaunt, staring at me with bloodshot eyes. Another receptionist sensed the unusual situation and seemed to have gone to call someone higher up, and soon after, the CEO, having heard the commotion, appeared in the lobby. "Ms. Walters, a reception room has been prepared. Why don't you talk to them there? I'll contact him myself." Having confided everything to the CEO in advance, I nodded in agreement to his suggestion, feeling uneasy about going alone, so I was accompanied by a colleague. He was the lawyer I had hired because of the issue with Edward, and Edward and his mother consented to him joining us. We all headed to the reception room. Even on the way to the reception room, Edward and his mother glared at me resentfully. Despite being cornered themselves, they seemed displeased to see me seemingly enjoying my work carefree. The atmosphere and their looks conveyed their displeasure all too well. As I sat facing Edward and his mother, continuing our standoff, the CEO came to the reception room, bringing someone with him. "Sorry for being late, Bill. Why are you here?" The person the CEO brought was Edward's elder brother, Bill. With an angry expression, he stood towering over the two, glaring at them. "What the hell are you guys thinking, doing whatever you please?" Bill was a born delinquent, who, in his youth, used to lead a biker gang that dominated the area. Now, he runs his own company, working in the construction industry, known affectionately as a boss by his employees. He is someone who detests actions that deviate from humanity. It was to him I turned for help in this matter, and upon hearing the situation, he was furious. He had sheltered me, now without a place to live, in the female dormitory at his workplace for several weeks, and took care of me for a while. He had also confirmed the situation regarding the house given to my in-laws. Unaware of the situation until then, Bill agreed to help as soon as he heard the story. The reason why he was unaware of the situation was, I made Sarah spill the beans and checked everything. "You've done something terrible to Vanessa. You don't think you're getting off easy, do you? The moment Sarah's name was mentioned, Edward and his mother's faces went pale. Sarah, Bill's wife, was the mastermind behind this whole affair. For some reason, she had always despised me. She lived as a housewife, never against her husband's will, not that he ever ordered her to. A woman's place is in the home. She was taught by her parents, who lived by this as if it were the norm. Thus, it was natural for a woman to take care of the household. And those who couldn't were not considered true women. However, I wonder how I appeared to her, overturning nearly 4 decades of her fixed beliefs. Working passionately. Perhaps, my presence was too dazzling for her. Moreover, Sarah was catastrophically bad at cooking. So much so, that even Steve had studied cooking, hoping she would improve to a level that even Edward had once mentioned. Yet, I was someone who could manage household chores to a reasonable extent. Furthermore, I was able to balance work and do even more housework than Sarah. Perhaps, she was envious of my ability to manage everything. Every time we met, Sarah would throw snide remarks at me, accusing me of neglecting household duties or calling me a wife lacking in virtue, for letting my husband take care of home chores. Over the decades, I've been subjected to her spiteful comments countless times. However, each time, Bill would stop her. Probably, to Sarah, even that was an unacceptable factor. Bill had always said that if Sarah wanted to work, she could. And he contributed to household chores as well. It was her decision not to act, and it was absurd for her to take it out on others. When Bill lectured Sarah, she took out her frustrations on me, detesting me even more. When I confronted Sarah, it turned out that she had orchestrated the whole plan to take over the house and make you buy it. She had instigated them into this plan, thinking if they pretended to be senile, you couldn't say anything to them. Taking advantage of the fact that I couldn't contact Bill due to my relationship with Sarah. Everyone did as they pleased. I was even thanked by Edward for playing a part in this affair, making everyone complicit. The only one who knew nothing was Bill. If I had known, I could have stopped this foolishness. Bill probably felt terribly sorry towards me for this entire incident. I see. So that's why everyone behaved so quietly in front of you. Whenever Bill visited the house, my in-laws never made any moves. Surely, they knew what would happen if Bill found out about their actions. The CEO and my colleagues, who had been listening to the conversation, stared at Jane and Edward, taken aback by their behavior. Let's see, what should I do about this? I've been disgraced by someone else. And Vanessa has been troubled by such a nuisance. I have absolutely no intention of forgiving any of it. But this. If we're going to talk about the origin, it was Sarah who started this mess. That's right. We just got taken in by a smooth talker, we didn't mean any harm. No harm, you say? Edward's words were the last straw for me. I slowly stood up, with a demonic expression on my face, and yelled at Edward and his mother in anger. Do you think doing such a thing and saying no harm intended is going to cut it? Do you have any idea what I've been through these 13 years, staying by your side? The moment I let out the feelings I had been holding back, tears of anger and frustration started to fall. Neither Edward nor Jane had ever seen me cry before. No matter how difficult things got, I endured and persevered. Even when I was told by Steve that he had dementia and was treated however he wanted, I never showed any signs of crying, living a life enduring everything. In their eyes, I was seen as a strong woman who doesn't cry. To see someone they thought was strong, raising their voice and shedding tears, it's no wonder they doubted what they were seeing. Do you understand how grateful I felt towards you all? How much I thought I had to repay you? That I even interacted with Dad because of such a wicked reason? I can't forgive you. I will never forgive you all. With those words as a signal, Bill called someone into the drawing room, and a man in a black suit entered. He sat down on the sofa facing us and stared intently at Edward and his mother. "I will thoroughly take everything from you." "What?" Confused by the sudden turn of events, Jane let out a bewildered voice. "This man is the lawyer hired by Bill for me. He is a famous, capable lawyer in our area and is like a mentor to me, including all the inhumane acts you've done to me. I'm thinking of demanding compensation from you." "What did you say?" "That's too late now." "How many months do you think have passed since then?" "The number of days doesn't matter." The lawyer, who had been silently listening to Edward and his mother, pushed up his glasses with his finger and showered them with calm, sharp words. "Based on the physical evidence at the time, and the reasons why we want to claim compensation from you now, it is possible to pursue the claim. In this case, we have not made any agreement not to claim money at the time of divorce, as I understand. Therefore, there is no specific deadline for when to make the claim, so it is possible to claim compensation. Furthermore," saying so, the lawyer showed an SSD from his breast pocket, and Edward and his mother blinked in confusion at it. "What's that?" "This is a record that Vanessa has been accumulating. Her PC had a camera attached for remote meetings, and the inhumane acts your family has done are stored as data." The moment they learned of this fact, Edward and his mother's faces turned pale. It seems Vanessa worked a lot in the living room. Many of today's laptops have built-in cameras. Unknowingly harassing Vanessa in the living room has come back to haunt you. The lawyer then put the SSD back into his pocket and looked at Edward and his mother with cold eyes. "The ownership of the house has already been transferred to Vanessa. Your forced eviction is only a matter of time. We will arrange for this matter immediately." Wait a minute. Changing the ownership. Edward instinctively reacted to the lawyer's comment as if it was something taken for granted. The one who responded to his words was Bill. "I was the one who suggested changing the ownership to Vanessa. Thanks to you guys changing it to Sarah without asking. It actually made it smoother for us to make the change. Do you have any complaints about that?" Bill approached Edward with a mischievous smile, seemingly amused by his flustered reaction. Edward, who had never won a fight against his brother since they were kids, couldn't dare to express his own opinion, and their mother, who was listening, also kept her mouth shut. "I'll also be billing you guys later for the expenses related to the gift. That's only fair, right? Since it's your wrongdoing. If you sow the seeds, you need to harvest them yourself. It would be a great nuisance to us otherwise." Standing with his arms crossed and an imposing stance, Bill spoke sternly, leaving both of them unable to say a word. He had also communicated the same thing to Sarah, and had mentioned during a phone call that he intended to divorce her once this matter was settled. "Even though I was unaware, I'm truly sorry for dragging you into this mess. I will support you with all my might to make things right for you. Just say the word. It was my family who did this, so I bear responsibility as well. If Bill hadn't reached out to me after hearing about my situation while I was packing that day, I might still be suffering alone. Without anyone to rely on, being on their side, I wouldn't have been able to recover like this. I never realized how much strength just having one person who supports you can give." While feeling grateful for Bill's kindness and warmth, and glaring at the two, I delivered my final words to them. "I will never forgive you for exploiting my and my father's feelings for your own gain. No matter how much you try to atone for your sins, I will never forgive you. If you ever come to the office again, I will definitely report you to the police. From now on, handle everything through him, our lawyer. Do not appear before me ever again." Thanks to the CEO and a colleague who listened to the entire conversation as witnesses, Jane and her accomplice had no way to escape blame. They acknowledged their fault with heads bowed and left the office. Shortly after, Edward and his group left the house. For the compensation, considering the house purchase, the marriage, and the mental and physical suffering since the marriage, Bill negotiated a settlement of $70,000. I really wanted to get more out of them, but the lawyer and I agreed that this was realistic, and that's all we could get. To Bill's disappointed complaint, I shook my head vehemently. Normally, even for psychological abuse, the maximum would be around $30,000. Yet, even with additional crimes, we managed to extract more than the usual amount. For me, it was nothing but gratitude. The house also returned to me safely within a few days. The furniture and appliances were also retrieved safely under Bill's supervision during the move. Now, I am offering it as a rental property. The house is too large for me to live in alone, and with its barrier-free access and good location, it would be a waste not to use it. Following Bill's advice, I decided to offer it as a rental property. Sarah, as Bill declared, is living a tightly controlled life until she repays her debts. She, along with Bill and Edward, are working from morning till night. Steve, due to his disability, could not do the same but had his pension garnished to repay the debts, living a hellish existence. Hearing this, I felt relieved to have Bill as a dependable figure. Years have passed. I continue to work hard as a lawyer. Thanks to Bill, the monthly payments are made without delay, and it is expected to be fully repaid by the year after next. Having once considered ending my life multiple times during that hellish period, I now live each day with gratitude, embodying the phrase that perseverance will always be rewarded.